Yeah, hi Meg. Thanks for that wonderful intro. No, I think you really covered it. Thanks for the warm welcome.
All right. So to get us started, we do have some questions we're going to be asking Joyce. But for all of our people watching online, hi, thank you so much for joining today. Please feel free to, participate in today's conversation. If you have questions, please send them in the chat. We've got Power to Fly people standing by to collect those and send them over here to us. If you want us to dive in deeper on, terminology or anything, please feel free to ask in the chat. And as always, we really encourage your comments. Let us know if your lived experience is different from what we're speaking on, or if you have any thoughts, we'd love to hear them. Just make sure that you are, adhering to our code of conduct. Basically, what it boils down to is don't be a jerk. And as we're operating, or as we're, networking and everything with our fellow attendees, just make sure that we are operating from a place of kindness and respect. All right, Joyce, in your obviously extensive approach or and experience coaching, especially focusing on many high achievers from different backgrounds, do you think there are any common challenges that you have observed in the people that you've coached?
Yeah, great question, Meg. Definitely, there are a good number of common challenges. And, one thing about my background, which I think has helped me be really successful and helpful to, Asian Americans and BIPOC leaders and women, and really guiding and coaching people like in their career path, is the fact that I started my first business when I was 19 and I was in college, and a couple of friends of and I started a web design and web development firm. This was during the first dot-com boom. And so, my personal experience, which is a little bit different from most BIPOC professionals, is I really have almost no knowledge of what it's like to not be a leader. And I really think that that unique perspective is one thing that helps me help my clients be as successful as possible, because like just not being empowered is just not an experience I'm as familiar with. Of course, I've experienced discrimination and challenge and everything like that. But I'm very used to people coming to me and saying, like, Joyce, I know you've got all the answers. And just, even when I was 19, I was kind of like faking it while I was making it. But I was in these positions of, leadership as a founder. And so I think for me, that experience has been really helpful. It's helped me compare, I've been able to compare and contrast that experience with what I see happening with other folks. And I think for Asian Americans and, BIPOC professionals in general, there are these things related to our families. And I say our because it's definitely my experience growing up as well. I grew up in an immigrant family, and I'm Chinese American, and we immigrated here when I was 1.5. And my sister is 8 years older than me. So we always spoke Chinese at home, and my parents worked more like blue collar jobs, and so like money and scarcity was always a theme in our family. And my parents basically just gave me a bunch of messages like, oh, all you had to do to be successful is work hard, work really, really hard because things are
Yeah.
difficult. And also, my parents, generally also said, hey, like, don't create risk by, rocking the boat or getting into conflict with people. Just say what, do what your boss says, right? Like, don't create any conflict, like, never disagree with anyone.
Mhm.
And you're going to be okay and you're going to be safe. Or like never say no to things, like always like say yes to like any work you're assigned or like any project you're given. And then also they just said like work as hard as possible, but don't spend a lot of time like wasting time like building relationships or like getting to know people, right? Just like focus on your work. um
Mhm.
and then I think the other thing is also, it's very like Asian American and probably also, something that's a BIPOC professional experience as well. um, don't brag about yourself. Like, like don't be too visible, right? Just be humble and like you really have to earn everything. And
Mhm.
so all of these messages that, kind of helped our parents like survive and also were helpful, things that were part of, like a culture that's not exactly American culture. Like when we like take these values like from our parents and we translate them into the modern world, things don't always work because that's sort of like outdated advice that doesn't really apply to the current situation. So a big part, like all of those things sort of keep people like underneath the bamboo ceiling, or they keep BIPOC professionals like in this like middle management trap. But like getting to the executive level roles and like really, like getting promoted and like getting raises is a lot harder because you just become known as like, oh, this is the like the workhorse, the person who's just gonna, like work crazy hours and always say yes. But there isn't as much visibility and there isn't as much mobility.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, one series of challenges, and working through that and just recognizing like, hey, the advice that our parents gave us was definitely like given to us out of love, but we actually have to intentionally figure out what actually is applicable and what isn't is a really important step.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I can only imagine how it would compound when you are also facing, identity stereotyping, a lot of the things that go hand in hand with an immigrant experience, especially in America, which to be fair, I do not, I've never experienced. But I do think there is absolutely something to this idea, like I said, especially compounding that with this idea that like our parents try to give us this great, great advice, right? But like taking advice from love my dad, but taking advice from my dad about how to get hired in the job market in the last 10 years was a lot of things like, we'll take your resume in.
Mm.
Go ahead and call them and say, I just emailed you my resume. Well, why don't you just like go in and ask if they have any openings? I know there's nothing posted, but just go ask them and see. Like, and he's telling me to do this with like Microsoft. So, it's one of those things where like, okay, just because that was valid advice for you or knowing that it comes from a place of love, it's a little bit easier to understand, but it's still something you have to fight against, right? This idea of like bootstraps and just get a second job, get a third job. It'll be fine if you work hard, it will eventually pay off. And, it seems valid, but in practice maybe doesn't exactly do what you want.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly right.
so knowing that a lot of your clients share these experiences and a lot of the mindsets or anything that might be holding them back or not helping them achieve what they want to, how do you then tailor your approach to address what each person uniquely needs on top of these shared experiences?
Yeah, great question. So you're exactly right. I definitely think of every coaching engagement as a custom experience. And, like two people who are even in similar roles might need vastly different things. In that some people like know exactly what their goals are, and they just really need help creating the strategy and the action plan to achieve those goals. Other times people come to me and they just say like, like one day I woke up and I just realized like I'm totally not doing what I want to do. And I realized, because of oftentimes because of pressure from my parents, like I was forced to like go down this career path, and like I literally can't do it anymore. Like, I'm waking up every day with this like sense of dread, or even like I feel really depressed because I don't like how I'm spending my time. And so, in the first situation, someone really needs more strategy and tactics. And then in the second situation, there's sort of almost like a healing or, a big mindset shift that that person is going through. And, like when things happen like that, where you actually need to change a lot about who you are and you're giving yourself permission to be more authentically you, there's definitely a lot of encouragement and support and safety that a client might need. So we might go a little bit deeper in terms of, how they're feeling about it, what's scary, what's exciting, and really start there before we go into the, like nuts and bolts of, okay, what's our strategy? What are our tactics? Because ultimately, when people are in that stage where they say, I don't even know what my goals should even be, or like, how do I get clear on what's going to make me happy and fulfilled and, create meaning? It's almost like pulling on the sweater. And so then, like one uncertainty like leads to another. And then people just realize, you know what? I really need to understand who I am, period. And a lot of people have this light bulb moment of just saying, like, I've just been living out my parents' dreams. And one of the big pieces of work I do is, especially with my mindfulness background and just being a really grounded person, one thing I really offer to my clients is, a really deep sense of psychological safety and like really, so always makes me feel a little emotional. Um, really what people get from me in coaching is they really get my unconditional love. And I tell my clients all the time, I'm really proud of you. Sorry, I just need a moment.
I know you're gonna get me too. Like it really, there's something powerful in hearing that from someone who is not somewhat contractually obligated to say it to you. You know what I mean? Like it's one thing for your parents to
Yeah.
say it, and that's lovely. And there's a ton of people who never get to hear that, would absolutely love it from a parent. But being seen by somebody and really understood for what you're going through is so massive. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, either you've never felt that othering, which I love that journey for you, but if you don't know, just try and understand. It's amazing. It really is. I'm glad that you have that connection with your clients.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, I'm just so really thanks for letting me shed a couple tears online. Just a very touchy-feely person.
Yeah.
And I also love helping people create huge results. But just as you were giving me the space to reflect on, my process and like how I work with clients, it just really hit me that some people just really needed to hear that. And that's, yeah. And they also need to hear like, hey, I'm proud of you for, going on your own like true path and like whatever you choose, that is a right answer.
Well, now
So
you're getting me.
feel it.
Okay. We can't be crying at the same time. Okay. So I'm gonna lock it up. I'm gonna get my stuff together here. Um, okay, no, this is fabulous. And I want to make sure we keep moving forward in our questions.
Yeah.
This is absolutely wonderful. I love this. As someone who is the safe person for my group,
Mhm.
I fully understand that
I
feeling
know.
of like wanting to see someone else succeed, wanting to make whatever they're going through a little bit easier, a little bit better. I think that's wonderful. Okay. All right, let's talk about the difference between types of leadership. What do you see as the main difference or main differences between being a manager versus being a leader?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think like talking about this explicitly is just really powerful because there are a lot of really clear distinctions. To me, a manager is someone who is overseeing people who are doing tasks and is simply ensuring that things get done and more of a taskmaster. And I think when you're first getting started in your career, first like 3 to 5 years, and someone becomes responsible for the work of other people, you're likely a manager. And the value you're bringing is in overseeing and even kind of micromanaging the work of others. And that's a great place to be. It's definitely an accomplishment. There's nothing wrong with that. And then, as people evolve in their careers, leaders basically do things that get a lot more leverage, where, instead of one person like being responsible for like say 3 to 10 people and, having some oversight, a leader can impact, an entire organization or, affect really huge change and, basically cause these ripple effects just through being really, really potent. And so, some things that a leader doesn't do is a leader isn't micromanaging, right? They're like building relationships with the people that they manage. Usually, those people manage other people. And a leader is inspiring people, clearly communicating, what the overall objectives and goals of, like the company or a team or a group are, and helping and coaching and guiding their team to get those things done. They're also really clear about like what the goals are and the culture and like the mission and the values of a company and a team. And they're very aligned with the strategy. And I think a good leader just really empowers people, motivates them, and then also guides them. And I think one other big difference between a leader and a manager is leaders don't just like bark orders at people and tell them what to do. They say, hey, this is what we're looking to achieve. How do you think we should accomplish this? Or what do you think? Like, how would you like to approach this? And then let me know what support you need. And so that's, a much more empowering kind of relationship.
Yeah, of
I think,
course.
yeah, so that's a lot about the responsibilities of a leader. And then I think in terms of personal qualities, a really good leader has courage, as well as really, really great relationship building skills, and skills around influence. Because at that level, when you're getting things done, it's not about just telling people, right? It's about like, really getting everyone on the same page and being able to make your case and communicate and show people like, your perspective. And then sometimes, I think I've been on, many executive management teams, people don't agree. And so you have to have those skills around having healthy debate. And a good leader has the courage to be okay with disagreeing with other people, because sometimes that disagreement or that perspective is actually going to enable them to affect the right kind of change. And I think about, someone like Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs like never, like or Elon Musk, as a more extreme example, right? Those are examples of people who are not afraid to disagree with others. And for sure, I don't agree with all of their, methods of communication. But sometimes like having that vision requires disagreeing with people.
Yeah. No, it makes a ton of sense. All right, we mentioned earlier this idea of the bamboo ceiling, right? If you're all,
Yeah.
I'm assuming pretty much everybody here is going to be familiar with it, but in case you're not, it's, a bit likened to the glass ceiling, talking about how the higher you rise within the levels of an organization, the less likely it is to there to be diversity or true representation at those levels. If you think that there are people, well, okay, let's put it this way, if you're part of an organization and you are trying to create a culture that is not only welcoming and including to diversity candidates, but also empowers them to, like you said, move up into leadership and thrive there, what do you think organizations can do to create that environment to allow these things to happen?
Yeah, I think that that's a really important topic to touch on, because whenever I work with coaching clients, I like to really share this like saying from Thich Nhat Hanh, who's one of like my mindfulness meditation heroes, and he just says, "I'm partially right, and you're partially right." And a lot of coaching clients have come to me really upset, like, hey, I got passed over for this promotion, or, like this other person with way few less years of experience, but they're white, like somehow like people like them better and they were invited to apply for this position. And typically in those situations, I think that like the professional has a certain amount of responsibility, and then the organization has a certain amount of responsibility for that outcome that happened. I think on the personal level, individuals can focus more on relationship building and also investing in their own executive presence and communication. And then I think on the company level, companies can also invest in creating more training and on this executive presence, communication, and leadership and management skills. Because I think oftentimes the reason that someone who's a BIPOC professional, or especially an Asian American professional, doesn't get promoted is like a lot of people who are in those decision making roles say like, oh, that person doesn't like have this like management vibe, or they're not like management material. And like what that actually means is somehow that person isn't showing up with the right executive presence, even though they're qualified. But I think like, that last mile of creating more opportunity for diverse teams is to say, you know what? A lot of like BIPOC folks come from immigrant families and they didn't grow up like going to the country club. So of course they're not going to have that executive presence, but they're like perfectly qualified. They're really talented. And with training, these folks really can, excel in these roles. So I think training is a big thing. And then also, I think that it can be very valuable for companies to, continue having a certain amount of diversity quotas, just so that this stuff happens, right? Because the path of least resistance is people are just going to say, oh, let's just hire the easy candidate. Let's hire someone who like, fits like our idea of like what leadership or management material is. And so without those explicit like training programs and without these explicit directives of saying like we need to have a certain amount of diversity on these teams, it's very easy for these things to not happen. And I think a very similar example is how, on corporate boards, there are some directives now saying like every corporate board has to have at least X% of women on the board.
I like that. I mean, it very much reminds me of like interview quotas, right? So
Mhm.
that usually is something that plays into diversity focused hiring a lot, is this idea of like, okay, we have to interview a certain number of women for the position. We have to interview a certain number of people of color to make sure that people, candidates who might not have gotten a second look because they're just, lost in the sea of, apologies for the stereotyping, but basically straight white dudes. And
Yeah.
so it is one of those things where you want to do what you can to not only make sure that those people are happy, that they are thriving, but you want to also ensure that you are encouraging them and providing the setting that they need to feel supported.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. I just thought of one other thing that I think can be really helpful. Having more BIPOC folks on hiring committees and in these positions, like where decisions are being made, is really valuable. I just think about the last company that I worked for, like about 6 years ago, and the founders came from Princeton, and they were all white, and I was the person who at this company hired our first Black person, our first Latinx person, our first gay person, and our first person who didn't come from that much of a corporate background, a more like untraditional kind of background. And this person like wasn't super fancy. And, my CEO really had a problem with this candidate because he had come to like 2 days worth of interviews wearing the same shirt. And that was just like such a huge turn off. And he said, like, I don't know if this person can do the job. Like, I just don't have a good feeling about them.
Which is something that's so, like, subjective and so, like, I'm sorry, what bearing does that have on the job? Unless you're, like, in fashion, what
Yeah,
does it
no.
matter if you wore the
Mhm.
same shirt back to back? Like, that's just see, that's one of those things where it's like these, the metrics are just so they don't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
It's not relating, like, why are we tied to this?
It was extremely elitist. And, I was
Yeah.
working with a sales team. I said, look, we want people who are going to be really scrappy and resourceful. And I want to build a diverse team of people because sales teams, are like really excel when people learn from each other. And if we have people who all have the same background, we're not going to learn as much. And I really want to give, more opportunity. And we're selling to consumers and having a more diverse team of people who are able to connect with a wider range of people, like, and have different cultural backgrounds is going to be really, really key.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just think about that experience, and I was the person really advocating for this diversity and having, real impact on it.
Excellent. All right, we've got 3 minutes left. I want to ask you one more question. Apologies, this is going to be kind of a popcorn round.
Yeah.
But if when you focus on coaching Asian Americans, people of color, what actionable advice do you want to offer individuals who are trying to navigate these systemic barriers in their career advancement journey?
Yeah, I think really one of since most of my work is focused on people who are in leadership, usually at the director level and above, and they're really ambitious. I just really ask people like, what are your longer term goals, right? And then we get clear on that, and then we work backwards from there. And I think, one really great tip is definitely finding mentors, finding other people who are, 5 to 7 years ahead of you. And also finding other, Asian American and BIPOC leaders and executives who have already done it. And also identifying those folks like within your own organization is really powerful too, because they can help you navigate the system and advocate for you and things like that. But I'm very goal oriented, so that's always the first question, right? What is it that you're looking to accomplish? And then let's really chart the path to it. And what are the things, either logistically or personally or from a mindset perspective, that are getting in your way?
Oof, this has been a fabulous chat. Oh my gosh, Joyce, thank you so much. We have a little under 2 minutes left. I want to make sure we leave a little bit of time to thank you for your time. But if you could give someone a one piece of advice at the start of their career, what would it be?
Yeah. I think at the start of the career, I would say do as much as possible and learn as much as possible, because where you start might not be the ultimate type of role that you end up in. And so just getting as much experience and immersing yourself into things is really valuable. And then, the biggest risk at that point in your career is being light on experience. And then secondly, work as hard as possible to get to your first management opportunity sooner rather than later, because that's really going to springboard you into, a lot more opportunities and making more money if that's important.
Heck yeah. I mean, come on, none of us live on water and sunshine. So, I'm sure the money's got to be an aspect for most of us. Um, this has been honestly, Joyce, this has been so, so wonderful. I just want to thank you for your time today. Obviously, there's a ton of prep work that goes in on the back end of these events. So thank you so, so much for sharing your experience and your expertise with us. We really, really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Meg. Really appreciate it.